What's up, Hyperdrivers? It's another week and another episode of The Acolyte. This was the episode, just like I stated last week, that was supposed to be the flashback, the big reveal to let us know why all these events played out, right? No, that's a question. I may have nodded off 3 times. But not to worry, I woke up very early this morning, drank a full can of Ghost, and muscled through it all. So today I'll be talking about The Acolyte Episode 7, titled Choice. And just like in all my other videos, I'm not going to go through every single little detail about it, just the things that stick out at me. So if you didn't already watch the episode, that was your spoiler warning. Now, this episode was supposed to be a retelling of the flashback episode, which I believe was episode 3, but from a different point of view. Now, I think the idea of this was supposed to give the audience an experience similar to like what we had in the Harry Potter Prisoner of Azkaban or 1114 or in Haven, in that we see the same story play out, but from different perspectives. But if that's the idea they were going for, I feel like it didn't hit as hard as those movies I described earlier. This one felt more like a rerun with a little bit more information and one pretty badass fight scene. I say that because in the examples that I gave, there's moments where the audience remembers something that happened earlier on in the movie, and then later on in the story, we see something that directly affects that moment or a character that directly affects that moment. And I feel like we just didn't get that in the show. I believe this episode would have been better off being combined with episode 3, giving us one full picture of what happened, and then, just let it play out. I don't think it would have changed or made any difference in how we feel about the characters or the events that happened. The biggest question all season has been, what did the Jedi do that would cause them to go into exile, that would cause Master Torben to commit suicide, that would cause May to go after them? And I feel that the explanations that we got in this episode really didn't give me anything that they did inherently bad other than break up a happy home. So at the beginning of this episode, we're directly drawn into this flashback. Again, we don't see whose point of view this is. We just assume that this is Soul's point of view. I think the show would do better to start off maybe by showing the character that is retelling these past events, and it would give us a little more connection to it, I think. But we see that the Jedi are on Brendok, and that they've been on this planet now for like 7 weeks. They're cataloging the planet for plant life, trying to figure out how life sprung up on this planet, and they're growing restless. Trinity, Master and Dara, but she's always going to be Trinity to me. Anyway, she states that the planet was cataloged as not having any life on it 100 years ago due to the hyperspace disaster. So what she's talking about here is the events of the very first novel of the High Republic. It's called Light of the Jedi, in which the Nihil, which are this pirate gang, use a ship called the Legacy Run, and they destroy it in hyperspace. Now the ship starts to come apart. It comes out of hyperspace in several pieces and then starts hurling like meteors, all Armageddon style, at several planets in this system called the Triment system. So I'm going to be real here. I vaguely remember the total events of that book. It's been well over 2 years since I heard that audiobook. I vaguely remember that the Nihil used that same tactic against other systems. And so I don't know totally if Brendok is part of that Triment system or directly connected to the events of the hyperspace disaster. But it's possible that it is part of that system. So that would be kind of cool if it is connected. Either way, I think that The Light of the Jedi is a pretty good book. If you want to give it a listen, it's a really good audiobook, or if you want to take and read it, I recommend it. But I digress. Let's get back on subject. The Jedi have been on Brendok at this point for 7 weeks, they state, and they're trying to find a vergence in the Force that would have caused this life to spring up on this planet. And at least Soul seems very obsessed with what this is. The other 3 Jedi, not so much. So Soul's ordered to go out and follow the river, and he stumbles upon Osha and May, and then goes all stalker on them.
Every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you.
And that's where things get a little bit boring for me. The rest of the episode leading up to the final fight is kind of just a retelling of everything that already happened with a little bit more information. Mother Anastasia corrupting Torben because he wants to leave the planet doesn't really seem like a very interesting motive to fall to the dark side or to do whatever he did. I do like that Trinity at least acknowledges that the Jedi Council will not accept these kids because of their age, which falls in line with what the Jedi Code would say. So then we see the events play out very similar to episode 3. We see that the kids are tested, Osha passes. We see a little bit more develop with May, where she explains to the Jedi what they were doing with that ceremony, the Ascension. But then the very next scene, we see that Trinity tells Soul that the Jedi Council denies that the kids to be trained and denies them to be pulled from their family. And that's when Soul gets very weird and just becomes a very strange character to me. For one, he's obsessed with having Osha as his Padawan, and he's obsessed with taking her. And it just seems very out of character for him, and then also out of character where he would be at this point. There's nothing there that establishes this obsession, in my opinion. There hasn't been enough time for him to develop connection with this character of Osha. He does not yet know their midichlorian count, so he doesn't know that they're the virgins. But there's just this weird obsession, is all I can say, and I just don't think it fits. So right now you may be saying that Qui-Gon did the exact same thing with Anakin, but I don't feel it's exactly the same. It's a little bit different. See, when Qui-Gon found Anakin, he sensed the Force in him, he tested him, and then found out that the midichlorian count was super high, which made him believe that Anakin was the chosen one. At this point, Soul doesn't know the midichlorian count of Osha, so there is no connection like that, which makes Anakin special in that sense to Qui-Gon. Then without the Jedi's permission, he has that gamble with Watto, which then separates Anakin from his mother. So when he brings Anakin before the council, I think Qui-Gon feels that the Jedi Council is going to agree with him, right? They're going to see the midichlorian count. They're going to say that he's strong in the Force, and they're going to say, yeah, we absolutely got to train him. I think he's surprised that the council doesn't agree with him, and he feels some responsibility for bringing the kid there, for separating him from the mother. And now he has no way of bringing him back to Tatooine, so he feels that the only thing he can do is take him on as his Padawan, which the council disagrees with also. So I feel like there's a different type of connection there between Qui-Gon and Anakin. I feel like Qui-Gon has him as his Padawan because of a sense of responsibility that he feels that he put Anakin in this situation, whereas Soul seems obsessive about Osha. Like I stated in last episode, I think Soul has already fallen to the dark side, or has fallen and doesn't recognize it. You see that Trinity is seeing that in him, that she senses the darkness in him, but she doesn't act on it. Then we see Torben Gall, Leroy Jenkins, to go after Osha as soon as they find out that the midichlorian count is so high and that they have identical midichlorians, which makes them the virgins. So he sees that as their ticket out of that planet. So then we get back to the Coven, and Mother Coral is with May. She's super, super angry. She believes that the Jedi are coming like right now, which there's no evidence showing that they were coming at that point, which doesn't make sense. Prepare for arms when there's nobody there to attack. I don't get that. She gets May to be very angry, to go beat on some control to shut down the elevator. We also see that Mother Anastasia is having a disagreement with the rest of the Coven. It's because they don't believe that Osha should leave. I feel like the better setup for this end battle here would have been that Coral takes over the Coven. Like she somehow subdues Anastasia, kills her, or puts her in prison or something, but she takes over the Coven and then makes them battle hardened and ready for the Jedi to fight them. Versus having Anastasia there at the end, which she really didn't do much after this episode other than just be a martyr. So then Soul and Torben infiltrate the Coven. We see them confront Anastasia and Coral, and then May runs into the room. It's because she needs help because she started that fire, which then sets off the whole thing. You see Coral then move to attack. Anastasia then starts to mystify herself, which is very similar to like what Mother Talzin and then Marin can do, which is some kind of like teleporting feature. But we see that also May starts to materialize as well. So I think that she was moving to protect May, but Soul misinterprets this and stabs her with his lightsaber, killing Mother Anastasia, which I guess that's what sets May off on her path. Then we see this cut that doesn't make any sense to me at all. Coral yells at May to tell her to run, which, again, overacting. I think the directing here at this point just doesn't, really fit. So she's yelling at her to run, but then in the very next cut, we see May running off. We have Soul almost in arm's reach of her, which he could have just used a force pull to pull her back. But Coral doesn't even move to defend. Like, if you're telling her to run, shouldn't you, move to block her exit so that she can escape and then you're defending against the Jedi? That didn't really play out that way, which then makes the next scene less effective, is because then you have Coral attacking Soul. Soul is not defending himself. He's just letting her get her licks in. I guess it's because he feels bad that he killed Anastasia. And then you have Torben defending against the, I'm going to call them Night Sisters, but they're witches, which, again, why didn't he use any force abilities? He could have just pulled the building down on them, which would then fit into why he's, upset later in life. He used the force in a form of attack at that point. that would lead into that, which that never happens. And then Coral and the rest of the witches dematerialize into mist, so they all have this ability, whereas the Night Sisters, I think they only really show Mother Talzin that has that ability, that she can take a mist. So I felt like that was some kind of higher level of magic, but apparently all of these witches can do this. So they turn into this mist and they possess Kalneka. Now the Kalneka fight, that was pretty dope. I mean, it was not as awesome as the Stranger fight that we had a few episodes back, but it still was really cool to see a Jedi Wookiee getting into battle. Some of those fight scenes reminded me of that part in the Old Republic cinematic, like that part where he's striking the lightsaber and then you see Soul jumping over the lightsaber in slow motion. That was really cool. Then Master Trinity jumps in to save the day. She subdues Kelneka and she uses the Force to then, break the control that the witches are having over them, which just makes them all fall dead, which to me was kind of comical. I mean, I wish they would have went out a little bit more violently. Like I said, I think that having Torben pull the building down on the other, no-name witches would have given him a reason to feel bad about using the Force in a combative manner. And then maybe the only other fight afterwards, after she subdues Kalneka, would be against Coral, which then they kill, and again would then feel like they used the Force to kill something, which would make them feel internally bad, which we never got. And then at the end, we see that Trinity was the one that made the choice to hide this from the council, or at least tell the truth from a certain point of view. So I guess this episode is aptly named Choices, because it seems like a series of bad choices is what caused these whole events to play out. And speaking of choices, whose choice was it to put that song in the end credits? I don't know how else to say this to you, Disney and Lucasfilm. That kind of music does not belong in Star Wars, period. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Have you seen the latest episode of The Acolyte? Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below. Subscribe if you want to see more Star Wars reactions, unboxings, and news. And until next time, may the Force be with you.